Well, hey everyone. Hello. Hi. So good to be with you guys. It's been a long time since I've hung out at FBC Youth, so it's awesome to be here. It's been a lot of fun so far. If you've been coming to FBC Youth for a while, you know that this is a place where we love to have fun. We love to party, and we love to have a good time. I mean, Darren came in with, I believe it was 8 neon scrunchies on his beard, so we like to do weird stuff here. We like to joke around, we eat together, we hang out, and we have a lot of fun. And even in this context where we're talking about important stuff, we're still hopefully trying to have a good time. But I just want to kind of give you guys a little bit of a heads up because tonight the vibe is going to be a little bit different. And the reason for that is because the topic that we're talking about tonight is a little bit of a harder topic to talk about. And so I just want to give you the heads up because it's a little bit more heavy. It can be confusing. For some people, it can be scary. But even though we might not want to talk about it, I think it's really important that we do talk about it. We need to talk about it. It's that big of a deal. So tonight we're talking about suicide. And I know that for a lot of us in this room, there are a lot of emotions that are connected to that one word. And those emotions might span a range from complete anxiety to complete apathy. Anywhere from embarrassment to guilt to anger, fear. All of these things are totally normal feelings when it comes to this topic. Even it could just be that you don't even know what to feel about it. There's no right or wrong way to feel when we talk about this conversation. A lot of people in the room, including myself, have in some way, shape, or form been impacted by suicide in their lives. I don't know the details of your story. I don't know exactly where you're coming from. I don't know everything that you've been through, and I don't know how this conversation makes you feel. But if there's one thing I could ask you to do tonight, it's just to stick with me as we talk about this tonight, because I hope that this conversation will be helpful to you and helpful to others. And there's something that I know that I feel makes this conversation one of the most important, most relevant conversations that we might have all year, and that's this. According to the World Health Organization, suicide is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds globally. So in the world, the second leading cause of death. And I think that that makes suicide a really important conversation to have together, no matter how it makes you feel. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So stick with me. Now, before I jump in, I want to pause, and I kind of just want to address, if you are someone who is struggling with suicidal thoughts in the room tonight, I just want to pause and say that this is nothing you should feel ashamed of. This is nothing that you should feel afraid to talk to somebody about. Especially, consider talking to a counselor. I think a lot of people have fear about the idea of talking to a mental health professional. And I think that's really too bad. I personally have a psychologist that I talk to about my own mental health challenges, and I'm such a proponent for doing that. I think it's one of the best things you can do because these are the people who are actually best equipped to help you navigate through some of these things in your life in a safe way and in a healthy way. So I am all for that, and I always just want to start there and say, hey guys, there is nothing wrong with talking to a professional. So if you've been struggling with suicidal thoughts, meaning you've struggled with thoughts about ending your own life, please do talk to somebody, but definitely consider talking to a professional. It's an important step to take, especially if those thoughts are starting to become more and more frequent. I think most people who die by suicide have been battling with these thoughts for a long time. And it's important that we understand that as we have this conversation, because it sometimes appears like it's just a split-second decision or an in-the-moment decision, but the reality is that that person could have been struggling with those thoughts for a long time before ever acting on them. And so, we need to consider that. This is important to be thinking about, to be talking about before it kind of gets to that point. Now, when somebody is thinking about or perhaps attempts or even succeeds at ending their life, we're often left with a lot of questions. And a lot of those questions sound like this: why? right? Why? Why would somebody do this? Why would someone think this is the answer for their life? Or maybe, why didn't they think about how it left their family or their friends or me or whatever the question might be? Why? Or maybe even this one, why would God allow this? And I think the thing about suicide is that it is such a complicated subject that unfortunately there just aren't answers to most of these questions. It's hard to understand. And sometimes with suicide, there are just more questions than there are answers. And I mean, I certainly don't have all the answers. I'm not an expert. I don't really know why Darren asked me to come and talk about this to you guys tonight. But I do know this. I know that we can go to God with anything. We can go to God for wisdom. We can go to him for support, for love about any topic. And certainly that includes a subject like this. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We are going to look at what the Bible has to say and see how we can sort of navigate through this touchy subject together. So you guys know that the Bible is made up of stories, right? The Bible is made up of stories of people who lived, who loved, who experienced emotion, who struggled in the same ways that we do, the same ways that we struggle. And sometimes I think it's hard for us to remember that the people in the Bible were people just like us because they lived in this completely different context, totally different time frame, and it's easy to kind of just picture them as like characters in a movie or a story. But they were just people. We hear about these heroes of the Bible like Moses or Abraham or Paul, and we think these are these heroic guys, but they're people just like us who struggled with the things that we struggle with. They struggled with sin. They experienced suffering. They felt pain. So they're real people. And there's one person in the Bible in particular that I think gives us kind of some insight into how to deal with this type of a conversation. I've certainly learned a lot from his story, and so we're going to look at him tonight, and that person is David. So some of you may already know a little bit about the story of David. He started out just as a regular kid, working on his dad's farm, tending sheep. When he was a young boy, David wasn't known for anything in particular. He wasn't really known to anyone. But God had a plan for this guy that one day he was going to become the king, which is crazy when you think about it. Now, unfortunately, the king at the time, King Saul, who happened to be the first king of Israel, he wasn't too happy about this plan about David becoming king next. Like, it wasn't even going to be one of Saul's kids. It was going to be this shepherd boy. So he didn't like the plan. And to make things worse, not only was David going to take Saul's place, but as time went on and David became more and more known in the kingdom, everybody started to love David. Like, he became super popular, and they were singing songs about him in the streets. And so out of jealousy and out of fear of losing his power, King Saul actually ordered that David be killed. So he actually orders a hit on David. And so David finds out about this, and Saul's going to have him murdered, and David is left with this choice. What do? Do I stay where I am and risk my life and probably be killed, or do I leave everything and everyone I know, including, by the way, at this time his wife, and run away to safety? So David did what probably all of us would do. He chose to run away. And he went to other kingdoms looking for help, but at every turn, he found no one. He ran into rejection, and eventually David ends up hiding in a cave, just afraid and figuring out, what do I do now? Now, just imagine this with me. How would this make you feel? How do you think David must have felt? He's gone from this beloved future king to a man running for his life, hiding in a cave, betrayed, with nobody to help him. I think if I'd been David, I'd be feeling pretty alone, pretty depressed, lonely, and hopeless. But in the depths of his hopelessness, and in the depths of his loneliness, David writes something really profound, and I want to read it with you tonight. It's found in Psalm 34, verse 18, and it says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted."
See, this is what David knew was true, that no matter how bad his circumstances were, and no matter how depressed and how alone he might have been, that God was close to him in his brokenhearted state. And I know that everyone in this room has experienced what it feels like to be brokenhearted. You know that it's what that feeling of deep heartbreak is like. It's when you feel so weighed down and overwhelmed by your sadness and your sorrow that you literally feel a physical aching in your heart. And according to David, no matter the depths of how much we feel this way, that God is close to us in those moments. And that gives me hope. I mean, when I'm feeling the deepest pain of my life, to know that God is with me and God is near me in those moments, that gives me hope. And listen, I'm sure that we've all had some of those moments. I know that I've had moments where there's this overwhelming pain that you feel like no matter what you do, you can't escape it. And I mean, I'm a journaler, so I actually have those moments documented. Not that I would want to remember those moments, but I find that it actually helps me in the moment to get my feelings out. And there's actually, I brought a journal. This is my journal from 2011, and I brought it with me because there's a moment in this journal that I thought I would share with you guys, because I think it kind of sheds a little bit of light on this idea of being in that brokenhearted place, but then believing that God is close. So here's what I wrote. I said, God, what can I do? I am struggling so much, I would rather feel nothing. I'm almost to the point of feeling nothing. But it's not a simple, easy kind of nothing. It's a heavy, daunting, alone kind of nothing. It's bad. I know that I'm choosing this, but there is so little left in me that even wants to choose something else. It's just too hard. I don't know how to go on. I feel lifeless. Maybe some of you have written words like that. In my journal, I actually left a couple of lines blank, and now this is like 8 years ago. I don't know exactly what I was feeling, but I know me, and I know when I leave a couple lines blank in my journal, I've stopped writing, I've taken a minute to just kind of process and think about and maybe talk to God. And then a couple lines later, I went back to it, and this is what I wrote down next. I said, I need to stop talking at you, God, and just let you talk to me. Please, I need you. And here's the thing. As I look back on this season in my life, and there have been many seasons of deep depression and deep brokenness, but through it all, there was always one constant, and that was my relationship with Jesus. Even in these raw, broken moments when all I could do was just cry out to God with pages, literally pages, this whole book of complaints. At least I was crying out to God because intrinsically I knew in my heart that God is close to the brokenhearted. And it kept me going. You know, it kept my head above water just enough that I could breathe and not drown. And it gave me just that little bit of hope that somewhere on the horizon I would be able to reach out and grab hold of a branch or something that could pull me out of the water and save me from drowning. And it was just, it was just enough to keep me going, to get me through. And that's what my relationship with Jesus did for me in these seasons and in this time was it gave me that place to turn where, when like David, I felt like there was nowhere else to go. I was alone. I had nothing to live for. I felt hopeless. Jesus was a friend who understood my pain and who sat with me in my pain, and he loved me through it. He was close to the brokenhearted. But if I'm honest, okay, because I should be honest with you, even though I know this is true, even though I believe this is true, that God is close to the brokenhearted, that doesn't always make me feel better in the moment, right? I might know it, I might believe it, but sometimes it's hard to feel God's presence during those times when everything is hurting and everything sucks, right? Because simply knowing and believing that God is there doesn't mean my circumstances change, doesn't mean that my feelings change all of a sudden or get better. But that's why I think the next part of what David wrote is actually so important, because he says that God is close to the brokenhearted, and it says that he saves those who are crushed in spirit. Now, if you are someone who is struggling with suicidal thoughts, or if you know someone who's going through that right now, or if you have lost someone in your life to suicide, then you know exactly what it feels like to be crushed in spirit. You know exactly how hopeless that place really is. And I think that's what makes the truth of what David is saying here so important. That when you're completely brokenhearted, you're completely hopeless, you just feel like all hope is gone, that's when God is near to you. In fact, God never left you. And beyond that, he gives us the hope and the support to believe that help is near. He saves those who are crushed in spirit. He saves those whose spirits are crushed. And we all know what that feels like. God looks at us and he says, this isn't the end of the story. This thing that you're going through, this pain that you're feeling, the trauma that you've experienced, the circumstances that you're walking through right now, this isn't the end. This isn't the end. Now let me just stop here and address any of you who may have lost someone in your life, someone important in your life, to suicide. To you, first of all, I just want to say that I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for the pain that you've experienced. I'm sorry for the pain that your loved one was dealing with. I know that their story didn't end the way that you would have hoped it would. And what I want you to know is that God is near to you. In the heartbreak and the pain that you felt, that you're feeling, God is near. He is close to you. And I really believe that not only is God there to give us hope, but he also puts others in our lives to support us, to love us, to value us in our darkest times, even when we can't feel his presence. Even when you wonder, where is God in the midst of this, in your sadness, when tragedy strikes and everything hurts and you're wondering, why can't things be different? There are people in your life who are there for you, who love you, who support you, and who are showing you where God is in that moment. God works through the people in our lives, no matter how dark, lonely, hopeless the road that you're maybe on right now. I want you to hold on to this truth tonight, that because of God and others, you are not alone when you feel hopeless. Because of God and others, you are not alone when you feel hopeless. Now let me stop and say this. I recognize that a complicated subject like this, we can't just wrap it up and put a bow on it after talking about one verse. We've literally talked about one verse. It's not going to resolve it, like hearing David's story, hearing my story, memorizing a verse out of Psalms. It's not going to just make it go away. That's not what's up. But I do also believe that God's truth is really the best place to start when it comes to finding help, finding hope in your life through these dark struggles. So I want to encourage you guys tonight to let God's truth guide you. Because maybe tonight you really need to cling to that truth, that God is close to the brokenhearted. Maybe you need to cling to the truth that you are not alone, even if you think you are. Or maybe tonight you need to cling to one of these other truths. You are a big deal. God made you in his image, so you matter. Your life matters. Your life is important, even if you don't think it is. This stuff is in the Bible, guys. Another one, you have something to contribute to the world. Ephesians 2:10 talks about that. You've got stuff to offer. And God gave you value when he thought you up and created you. He wasn't just haphazardly throwing things together. He intentionally created you. and you can get through this, even when it feels like you can't. And while we're at it, let me add a couple things. This isn't in the Bible necessarily. This is just from me to you. But whatever trouble you're facing right now, it will eventually fade. It will. There will be better days, even if your brain is trying to convince you that that's impossible. High school won't last forever. I learned that. I thought it might, but it didn't. It won't last forever. You won't always have a broken heart. And you won't always feel embarrassed. You will make friends. Every negative thing that you're facing right now in your lives is temporary, even if it feels permanent. And that's the thing about these lies that the enemy wants us to believe. You know, a lie might tell you that this thing that you're going through, this stuff that you're feeling, it's going to last forever. It's never going to go away. But it's still a lie. And that's why it's so important for us to cling to God's truth and to start speaking his truth into our lives and over ourselves rather than allowing these lies to control our hearts and our minds. Guys, suicidal thinking is driven by lies, but God's truth conquers lies. And for all of us tonight, whether you're struggling with these kinds of thoughts and lies or not, there is something important that we all can do. Every one of us in the room, something that we all can do and we can start doing right now. And we can start talking. We can be the church to each other. We can think small. We can engage in personal relationships with one another. And we can start talking. We can choose to embrace what we know is true, and that is that because of God and because of others, you are not alone when you feel hopeless. We need to remember that. So if you have been having suicidal thoughts, I want you to start by talking to an adult tonight. Okay, that can be your small group leader. That could be Darren. That could be me. That could be one of your parents. But it needs to be tonight. It needs to be tonight. And I know that your mind is already giving you all the reasons why you don't need to do this and why you shouldn't do this, but please don't let those lies lead you anymore. Don't let them lead you. You can talk to an adult, and the truth is they're not going to be mad at you. They're not going to be freaked out and disappointed. They might even say, hey, I get it. I've been there. I felt that way. And if the thought of talking to an adult is just freaking you out and you're a little bit too nervous to do that on your own, grab a friend, take them with you. They'll support you. Now, I know that some of you too are downplaying those thoughts in your mind and you're thinking, it's not that big of a deal. You know, I haven't thought it enough to have to say anything to somebody. But guys, let's not do that. Okay? It's time to talk to someone. You are too important to fight this battle on your own. So let's not do this alone. Let's be there for each other. And for those of you who aren't struggling with suicidal thoughts, we can start talking to those who do or who might be struggling with those thoughts. We can encourage them to get help. Hey, we can talk to an adult on their behalf. We can get them connected to the resources or the people that they need to talk to in order to get the help that they need to navigate these struggles. And we can also ask them really important questions. We can ask them pointed, direct questions. Are you having suicidal thoughts? Have you thought about ending your own life? We can ask them direct questions. We need to be kind. But we don't need to shy away from using that language because we want to reassure them, I'm okay with having this conversation with you. No matter what your answer is, I'm here. And we can talk about this. So if they're willing to talk about it, chances are that this is a really important conversation because they might be seriously considering this. So we can do that. We can have those conversations. And if you don't know anyone who is struggling with these thoughts, or you're not aware that you know someone who's struggling with these thoughts, hey, we can continue to use our words to encourage people, no matter what. you know what? We can remind anyone and everyone that we meet the truth that they have worth and that they have value, that they are important to God. You can fill people up with encouraging truths that they can then take with them and rely on when they really need it some other time. Like, imagine this. What if we all just stopped holding back our encouragement and we just started giving it out freely to everyone around us? What would that look like? What if we made it our goal to remind others of their value as much as we possibly could? What if that was our goal? It'd be awesome. Now, I really also want to be very clear about something, because we could kind of glide over this, and I don't want to do that. This is important to remember, that talking doesn't always fix suicidal thoughts. And encouragement doesn't always fix suicidal thoughts. And trying to unfocus your mind on suicidal thoughts doesn't always fix suicidal thoughts. Sometimes there is a mental block or even a chemical block that can keep our minds from believing the truths that are right in front of us. And it's something that we can't control, and it's something that we can't fix on our own no matter how hard we try. Okay, in the long run, you might need to talk to a doctor or a counselor. We kind of already talked about this, but in the same way that you would go to a doctor when you're physically ill and talk to them for a solution, that might be part of the solution here as well. And that's okay. God uses doctors, He uses counselors to help us heal. Sometimes we need those people in our lives to help us get our minds healthy. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I don't think so, because I use that option. God has a full life in mind for all of us. We're His kids. He has big dreams for all of us. But if getting to that full life means talking to a professional, there's nothing wrong with that. So when you decide that you want to experience that full life that Jesus has for you, it's going to be a journey to get there. Sometimes it's going to feel like 2 steps forward and 8 steps back. And sometimes it's going to sting a little bit, because maybe you're going to have to talk about some hard things that you don't feel ready to talk about or that you've never talked about before. Maybe you'll need to take medicine. No matter what the steps are ahead in this journey for you, the first step is a step that you can take tonight, and that is talking to somebody who can help you. And no matter how this conversation makes you feel tonight, I hope that we can all leave here knowing and remembering this, that because of God and others, you are not alone when you feel hopeless. God and the people around you, the people in your life, love you. They value you. They value your life. They see you. And they want to help you and support you during your difficult times. Tonight is just the beginning of a much bigger conversation. There is so much more to discuss than what we have time for tonight. There is so much more on this topic. Definitely a lot more to David's story, so check that out. Dig into that in the Bible. I've struggled with mental health my whole life, basically, and there has been so much that I've been able to glean just from digging into David's story. But if after tonight you feel like you have more questions and you just something's not sitting right, please talk to your small group leader, talk to me, talk to Darren, talk to your parents or any adult you trust, really, and know that this isn't a topic to keep bottled up inside. So do something tonight and tell somebody if the thought of being gone has become more normal in your mind. We love you right where you are, but we don't want you to be there alone. So let's remember that because of God and others, you are not alone when you feel hopeless. Let me pray for you guys. God, thank you so much for these students. Thank you so much for the incredible, valuable lives that you created each one of them with, that they were made in your image to display your glory to the world around them. And I pray that they would, God. I pray for each one who is in a place of brokenheartedness. God, your word says that you are close to the brokenhearted. Please Wrap your arms around each one of them tonight to sense that closeness and to sense your presence in their lives. And may you help them to see the people that you've placed around them, even within this room, to know that you are expressing your closeness and your care through these people. God, I pray that we would be the church to one another, that we would think small, and that we would remember that because of you and because of the people that you've put around us, that we are not alone, even when we feel hopeless. Thank you, Jesus. I pray this in your precious name. Amen. Thanks, you guys.